Hey guys, this is Dominique Guilford, just giving you about a 3-minute warning that we will be getting started. Please feel free to tag someone in this podcast that you know would benefit from this information. Please feel free to forward the information so that someone else can actually take part in learning about what it takes to get started in the startup business. Our objective and our purpose is to offer as much informative information as possible so that you feel informed when you step out and take the necessary steps in following whatever it is that you feel God has called you to do and being great at doing it, and just giving you a little bit of insight on my journey, what it took for me, some of the hiccups that we experienced, and so forth and so on. So please feel free to go to the Facebook page, Dominique Guilford. And down below, I just recently made a post with the link attached that anyone that you know could possibly go to, click the link and be included into this conversation. Again, we have roughly about 3 minutes before we kick this off and get started. I'm going to finish setting up my equipment so everyone can hear me clearly, and I'm not going to come through muffled or anything. I planned on going live on Facebook as well, but I am experiencing a little bit of a complication with that. So following this video, we're going to go back and we're going to attach the footage from when I had the opportunity to interview my husband and my son and my daughter. I did do exactly what I mentioned on the last podcast when we had the table talk with the other individuals of this business group, which was to interview my children and kind of get their take on what it means to be the child of an entrepreneur and to kind of experience some of the woes and some of the ups and downs that they experience. And so I'm going to release that video along with the help of Miss Tanisha. And basically that video is just going to outline their viewpoint, what they feel, and how they kind of interpreted the opportunity for me to walk in what I know God has called me to do. I think that the information that they shared was pretty insightful and was pretty dead hands-on. And of course, everyone has a voice, and I was very interested in hearing their voice and what they had to say. So even as a mother, that was a learning experience for me to actually get their intake on what they felt. So we are roughly about 26 seconds out, and we will get started. Okay, hi guys. Welcome to the what to expect when you are expecting success podcast. I just wanted to kind of allow you guys the opportunity to join in and find out a little bit about my experience when I stepped out to become an entrepreneur, the mindset that I had and the reason why I chose to do it. My name is Dominique Guilford. I am 33 years old. I started my entrepreneurship when I was 26, and I have been self-employed ever since. A little bit about me is I graduated with my associates from San Jacinto College North back in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Then I moved over to the University of Houston, where I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies. My minor was Communications. It took me 2 years. I graduated from there on Mother's Day 2014. For me, that was one of the most exciting days of my life because it allowed me to understand that whatever it was that I put my mind to, I was able to accomplish it and it took me believing in what I wanted to do and the passion that I had to make it come into fruition. Roughly after that, I left the school district I was working at. I worked at North Forest Independent School District. I walked away from there in, what year was that? I want to say maybe 2012. And when I walked away from there in 2012, I've been running my own business ever since. It is very rewarding to be able to do so, but it also can be quite much when you have such big shoes to fill, because so many people are dependent on you to be great at what you do. Like I mentioned before, I do have 2 children. My oldest is Chad Guilford Jr. He is 14 years old. Then there's Danae Lagarde. She is 13 years old. She's the youngest. And they play a major part in how I adjust and process just the way I do things. And the reason why I say they play such a major part in the way that I do things and the way that I move is because I want to make sure that everything I do is with integrity, and they are going to be the direct they will be able to inherit whatever it is that we leave. So we want to make sure that whatever ground we are sowing into and whatever we're doing is going to be beneficial to them in the long run. Outside of my children, I am married. I do have a husband. I married him in 2015. So we're coming up on 3 years. And we started dating back in 2008. So from the beginning of this process, with me moving into wanting to do my own thing and be by my own drum and own my own business, he has always played a major part and been very encouraging and supportive and very willing to extend a helping hand when it came to me processing what I needed to process and do what I needed to do mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the above. I do believe that it takes a village of people who is able to see the dream and see the goal and see the aspiration for you to be great by all means. And I thank God that they are a part of my journey and they are a part of my success, because without them, I don't know if the success and the journey will be worthwhile. It was funny because before I signed on to actually record the footage that you guys will hear that will drop after this after this podcast via Facebook, I had volunteered my family to be a part of the discussion on what to expect when you're expecting as far as your family goes. And so they were kind of hesitant when I asked them to actually be involved with the recording. And it was just because it was like, okay, we don't really want to do it. And I get that. But as true troopers, they pushed through and they hung in there and they allowed me the opportunity to record them and their viewpoints of what it took for me to get to where I am. And so please be looking for that video again sometime this evening, early in the morning, regarding what they feel or what they do and how they do it. But my stance on what I felt when I heard my daughter tell me what it meant to her for me to start my business and what it felt like to have to sacrifice for us to get what we expected for it to bring after so much time was kind of an aha moment for me, because very seldom do we sit down and do we ask our children their opinions when we have a goal or a dream or an aspiration that lies within us. You know, you have like this burning desire to do something, and so you just start moving, and you just understand that the people who are attached to you by default really doesn't have a choice but to move with you. And so in her defense, she really didn't have a choice. She just had to move with me. And, you know, when she explained to me that she really didn't like it and she really didn't care for it, it really did something to me, because in my head as a mother, I would envision that you're able to see the progression and you're able to see the milestones and you're able to see the traction that we're picking up in business to be great, and you will be excited about it naturally, because if you see all of these things that we're now able to do because I'm able to be there in some capacity more financially, you would understand the benefit of it. And then when she broke down that regardless of whatever the financial benefit of it was, it meant more to her to be able to have that one-on-one time and have that opportunity to have fun and be down to earth and make these everlasting moments that will last a lifetime. And for me to hear that meant, okay, Ma, you could take a break. We know you're working towards something, but it doesn't necessarily have to consume you to the point to where you're pushing for this goal of this item. And regardless of the stance of what you're doing in it, we still love you and we still believe that you can do it. We know you're great. And so, even when she sometimes talks about when they ask her who is her hero, who is, the strongest person, or who is a Wonder Woman in your eyes, and she says me, it makes me really evaluate myself and my viewpoints on the way that she sees me. And it just really, it really affirms my ability to see greatness in myself through the eyes of my children. And so that was for me, that was an aha moment, most definitely. And then I had an opportunity to interview my son. Now, if you know CJ does not talk often. And he's a very laid-back personality. And when I say he's laid back, meaning you might get 2 or 3 words out of him at any given time, and then he's just going to be yes and no for every other question that you ask him. And the first question, you might get 3 or 4 sentences out of him. And then from there, it's downhill. And so for him to really open up in this interview and really express his viewpoint meant a lot to me, because I know it took a lot out of him for him to feel comfortable doing it. But basically, from my stance, what I got from him when we were talking was now, understand, we get CJ maybe every other weekend, and then we get him 30 days in the summer, and then however our holidays fall based on, everything that we have in place. So with the 2 weekends that we get him, he has to give up most of his days to work at the daycare and make ready what needs to be replaced or what needs to be handled and all of the above. Because a lot of what we do at our centers is very hands-on. We are very much a part of the everyday process of cleaning and upkeep and all of the above. And that entails them being a part of the cleanup and the make ready as well as us. And so he felt like a lot of the time that he was with us, we were either at the center doing something, or it took away from just bonding time outside of the center. And so from his stance, it was like, I'm having to come here and do these things that I may not necessarily benefit from every day. But I do understand that it was worth the time and it was worth the energy when we are able to get together as a family and let our hair down and actually have fun. And so to hear him say that really put a smile on my face, because you don't ever want someone to feel that walking into a situation that you're not a part of 365 days of a year takes a lot. And the fact that you're only in and out for the most part of it, you might not always cherish those droplets of moments when you're there and you are able to partake. And the fact that he was able to see the bigger vision from the inside of that meant the world to me, because he gets it, and it's so funny because I know I asked them the question of, if me and Dad died today or tomorrow and you guys had to take it over, would you want to do it? And Danae naturally just said, no, I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to do it because it just takes a lot, and then CJ turned around and his answer was, if Danae was going to do some and I was going to do some, then I would do it. And the fact that you could take a step back and you could split the workload with someone, and you see the value in carrying on with something that someone else stopped. So when me and Chad come to our stopping point, our vision and our goal is for our kids to pick up. And in that moment, what I heard CJ say, and this is my interpretation, is when you stop and you put it down, I understand that it comes a point where it becomes me and Danae's responsibility to take over and do what we need to do. And that just lit my heart on fire, because that let me know that you see that this thing is bigger than just what I doodled on paper when I was 16 or 17 years old. This shows me that somewhere buried on the inside of you, there is a part of a seed that's buried, and that thing is beginning to take root, and that thing is starting to grow in you to where you feel as if this is very much a part of you as it is to us. And so, though I don't think they fully get the importance of it now, I do think eventually they'll get the importance of it. And then that will allow them to shift in their way of processing it and thinking about it. And so, it's not always easy, but it is worth it when you have a family dynamic that's behind you. And when you are doing a startup business, it is very important. I cannot stress it enough, but it is very important that you have the support and the backing of your family. And when I say your family, it starts with your nuclear family. It starts with those that's going to be directly impacted by every decision and every move that you make. Because believe it or not, your bad day becomes their bad day. And your days of feeling like you're carrying the world on your shoulder becomes their day of carrying the world on their shoulders. And you cannot separate the two at some point, because at some point you are now a mother to everything that is a part of your life. And you have to be okay with understanding that your nuclear might not always support it, but they have to be on board in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Because without your nuclear, you will have a mental breakdown, because starting a business, regardless of what it is and what dynamic, takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot of your time. It takes a lot of your energy. It takes you missing special events and special days and all of the above. It takes finances that you may not have, accounted. It takes extra finances after the finances you did bank on come through and fall apart, and it's spent up and all of the above. And so you really have to sit down, and the first thing I would ask myself is this business going to tear my nuclear apart because everyone isn't on board? That is the first question you have to ask yourself. Because before I was able to get started, at this time, he wasn't my husband, he was just my boyfriend. I did let him know that I was no longer with the school system and that I know what God had called me to do. And when I started off in my house with my one little daycare kid, and I only had this one little daycare kid for, I know, about every bit of 2 months, that I expected to pay bills off one kid, and it wasn't happening. When I had a car note, car insurance, rent, food, and all of the above. And at this time, my husband now, but boyfriend then, had his own place, and I had my own place. We were not living together. He lived on the other side of town. He had his own set of responsibilities and what he had to do. So it literally fell on my shoulders. And it was tough, because if I tell you, I had to cash in CDs, IRAs, my daughter's college fund, and all of the above. When it came down to me investing in my dreams, my goals, and my aspirations, I did it. I cashed in. Still have the stubs of everything I cashed in to get this thing off the ground and running the way I needed to run. And that means all stops pulled out. And so that was my truth. That's what I knew I had to do. And I had to do it without looking back. I had to do it without stutter stepping, because that one stutter step could have literally pulled everything that I was trying to work towards down, because I allowed fear to overtake what I felt I needed to do. So I'm going to just fast forward the story just a smidget until roughly about 2014, when my then boyfriend proposed on Valentine's Day 2014. And so we had this great idea that we was going to have this, very nice wedding, which ain't nothing wrong with having a very nice wedding. But I feel like at that point was the point where our priorities may have been out of sync and out of line, because we planned this wedding with a budget and we exceeded that budget times 3. And I don't think that was the best decision for where we was, because be mindful that I had already signed the lease for our building for the daycare. I signed that August of 2014. Now, mind you, he had proposed in February, and we had a wedding date that we had put off. So we had 9 months to plan our wedding. So what I did not take into account was the money I was going to have to pay off for this wedding to plan it and make it what we wanted it to make. So at this time, I am paying out money for a daycare building. And let me just be clear and let you guys know that we signed this lease August 2014. We did not move into that building and have all of our permits completed in this building until September of 2015. So that means for 1 year and 1 month, I paid rent on this building. I paid utilities on this building. I paid cable on this building and paid contractors in and out this building to get this building up to par for us to open. Now, the building had to have lights for the contractors to work. We had to have running water for the plumber, and because it was a commercial space and we shared the water with other neighbors, and then we had to have internet and cable for our phone lines because that was the alarm system that we had set up at the time was running off of. And all of this money is coming out of my savings because our daycare was just getting up and running, but it took us a year and 1 month to do so. Now you have those bills being paid every month for 12 months. Well, 13 months if you count that 1 month, but 13 months straight. And then on the other hand, you had a wedding that we planned for 9 months that was replenishing my finances like in a blink. Every time you blinked, somebody was pulling some out of that account. Thank God for some kind of mercy because some kind of way everything was still getting paid. And then you look up, you have this amazing wedding and you open up this building shy of 3 months of one another. And now you're hitting the ground running. Now, let me tell you that finances for this grand opening of this daycare ran out before we even opened. Let's be clear. And so at this point, we had only two choices: to operate on a month-to-month basis, believing God that all our finances was going to come in, or to take out a loan. And at that time, we just had to operate on believing that God was going to provide, because I took so many hits to my credit for opening a business that when they went to go look for how much money I had available, that in the event I stopped paying this loan, it wouldn't be considered a high risk, and they couldn't find anything that I owned that was considered equity that I could put up for this daycare. So they would not extend us a loan. So we literally operated on faith for I know every bit of a year and a half, hoping that everything fell into place, and thank God it did. And it took all the prayers of my husband and all the prayers that I had and people praying for us to make it to the other side. But I say all that to say, please, please, please do your homework, and whatever it is that you plan on doing, whatever line of work it is, whatever your goal, aspirations is, please do your homework, because that money runs through so fast, depending on what it is, or if you have to secure a building or anything of the above nature, that you want to make sure that you budget 1/3 over what your numbers on your paper is saying. So if your goal is $29,000 to get up and start, and that's going to cover you for 6 to 8 months, go ahead and factor in another 1/3, because you just want to make sure you have a cushion to secure you not having to shut down before you open. And it was so crazy because when we had signed our lease on our business for the building space, I remember posting on Facebook. It was August that I posted, but I was in a car. I was in a yellow dress, had my half flat on, went and signed the lease, received the keys, and walked out. And in my head, that was the first step. I'm about to make it happen. And by month 7, when we had to go and pay rent, that was in the thousands for this building. It wasn't hundreds. It was in the thousands for this building. I remember going to walk the check in to our, the company that we paid rent to. And it was located off of Westheimer in Richmond. Well, it was off of Richmond, but it was closer to Westheimer side. And I remember him telling us, he said, I don't understand how you guys are still paying rent on the building that you have not moved into yet. He said, I'm not going to even lie to you. He said that 4th month, I had a bet going with my business partner. And basically what I was saying was, I don't see you guys ever moving in this building. About month 4, you guys were going to be calling us trying to get out of the contract. And when he said it, it kind of crushed my heart, because in that moment, I realized people were really counting us out, because they weren't able to see the progression and the steps that it took to get this space open. And I remember turning to him and I was like, you know what? Some days I want to count myself out. I said, but I understand my purpose and I understand what I'm called to do. That's all I said to him. And he just looked at me and he had this little smirk on his face like, okay, time will tell. That was the look he gave me. Now we're going to fast forward to after we moved into the building. The first year we moved in. Again, we moved in August, end of August, beginning of September of 2015. And I remember 2016, around the same time, he was coming because we were getting new pavement and he had to come and serve notice to all the tenants inside the shopping strip that, we were getting new pavements and people weren't going to be able to park on the pavement. And when he walked in and he saw the center, he was like, I must tell you, I am so proud of you guys. He said, because nobody ever thought you guys were moving in this space. He said, a piece of me felt bad for taking your money, but business is business. And I looked at him and I just kind of smiled because in that moment, what he was saying without saying it was, you guys really did it. And then from there, we waited maybe a year after being in that space, a year and a half, a little shy of 2 years. And then we did an expansion, which we just called Building 2. It was an expansion because the buildings are not conjoined. And we rolled out another, I think, 1,400 square feet. And then when we signed the lease with him, they came back out, wished us the best, all of the above. And they were, really rooting for us. Now, let me kind of just explain to you how God worked for us. In this particular moment, when we rolled out building number 2, we had the option of doing a sliding scale, which allows for rent to expand over time as you build out. Or we had the opportunity to get certain months free for rent where we did not have to pay. And I remember thinking I would prefer to get months free so we can save some money. And then I put it before God. I never forget this. I was like, okay, God, you're going to have to figure this one out because both are great opportunities, but I'm not sure what we're going to do. So we fast forward to when we had to sit down inside the contract. What they did was they ended up giving us 6 months free on rent. We did not have to pay rent for 6 months. And then after that 6 months, then we went into a sliding scale. And I knew it was nobody but God who did it like that. So it almost gave us a year's worth of rent that we did not have to pay because it took us just as long as the first building to get into that second building. So literally we was already understanding that it was going to take us about a year to get this building open. Now, mind you guys, that when a building opens for childcare, you have to go through the water district. You have to go through licensing. You have to go through permits. You have to go through a public works, health and health department. You have to go through DFPS, which is the Department of Family Services. And all of these people have to enter this space before you can even open this space. And it takes about a year for everyone to get in, get their paperwork done, and get out for you to start operating. And if I tell you, it was some of the most strenuous times to the point to where after building 2 opened, I told my husband, yeah, we won't do this again. We cannot do this again because at this point, me and my husband are business partners. And our marriage is holding on by a thread. Now, mind you, we had only been married a year and a half. But it was hanging on by a thread because the same person I have to go home to every day and develop a relationship with is the exact same person who I have to consult on every decision that has to be made. And it's not always so easy to turn off the husband hat and the wife hat and put on business partner hats when you're operating in business and still communicate effectively with decisions that is affecting income in and out of your house. So when we did this rollout, what we didn't account for was when this rollout happens, it's going to take about $60,000 to get this building open, $60,000 to $70,000, depending on the time frame that it took licensing to come out. And it took them shortly about a year. So that meant that extra money could not come from savings. That extra money had to come from my paycheck that I was supposed to take home. So that put all the weight onto my husband's shoulders. Now, anybody who knows my husband is in law enforcement. He has been a police officer for like the last 15 years. He was a police officer before I met him. And so police officers, they have the opportunity to work extra job and overtime and all of this to get extra income. So my husband was working overtime, extra hours, all of the above, to where on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it was understood he wasn't coming home. So I saw my husband Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesdays and Thursdays, he worked doubles. Saturdays, he worked an extra job. And on Sundays, he worked an extra job. And we did that for about a year and a half. And it took a toll on the marriage because we're not spending the time together. He's burnt out. I'm burnt out mentally. He's burned out mentally and physically. And then we still have to make these credible decisions for the upbringing of a sinner. It was a lot. But to understand the purpose and the dreams and the ambitions and the goals that we had and the desire for this thing to be greater than us outweighed the sacrifices that we had to make. So again, I say to you, in a startup business, please understand that it is not easy, it is not comfortable, and it isn't always set up to pay out right away. And I think sometimes we see the progression of people's success through social media after they have established a little bit of success, but not often do they share what it took to get there. And so I think for me, I shut down mentally and emotionally to where I knew I couldn't post on Facebook and I couldn't really express what I needed to express for people to see the journey. And then one day we were doing something and I happened to look up and we had made it. Now, when we made it, how we made it, and where was I when we made it, I'm not sure. But I knew it happened because now I was able to cash my check again. Now I was able to do all of these things that I wasn't able to do before. And life was great. Then we're going to fast forward a little bit more until right before Harvey hit. And right before Harvey hit, we were, winning. We had everything set up the way we needed to do. We had finally paid everything off. We were operating debt free. We didn't owe anybody nothing. We were doing our thing, living our best life. And then Harvey hit. And when Harvey hit, all of our personal life was washed away. Everything we owned that was personal outside of business washed away. We had nothing. We had to start all the way over in our personal life. And I don't think it bothered us as much having to start over in our personal because our business withstood the water. And we were one of the few daycares that withstood the water on the east side because 4 or 5 of the owners that we're like a small little group that was in that area didn't have the same story. And they had so much devastation that they didn't even desire to reopen. And so we had a different type of story. Yeah, personal was gone, but business was still safe. And to me, that was a fair trade. I was willing to take it and walk away with it. But then that just kind of put a little bit more on your plate because here we are 6 or 7 months living in a hotel, drove a rental car for I think 30 to 45 days. And my husband having to stay out closer to his job so he can get there took a toll on us again. So we, finally started making it up the ladder just to come right back down a little bit. But we were thankful that we had the opportunity to still be together. We had the opportunity to still enjoy life, and we still had the opportunity to still work at our business that we had worked so hard and put so much into that it felt like an even balance. So 6 months fast forward, we move out of the hotel, we move into a temporary apartment, and we're living life to the best. We had to replace cars, daycare vans, and all of that stuff that was stored off site. But at the end of it all, we withstood it. So fast forward probably 6 months, and then we had the opportunity to do a third expansion, which is what we just finished last Monday. Now, when I tell you this expansion took 9 months, we just moved into this space last Monday. And it is very baffling because we knew the headache the first time, we knew the headache the second time. And then when we were faced with the opportunity to literally double the amount of space we had in our first grand opening and our second grand opening put together and take on a space that was 2 times larger than those 2 spaces put together, it was an amazing opportunity, but it was 2 times harder with twice as much work to get it open. Because what we did not factor in was all of these people who was devastated from Harvey still getting back on their feet and the city rebuilding, that we now had to get in line behind priority cases of people trying to get buildings open for families to relocate and move into, schools that had closed down, that was still trying to get reopened, and people's residency and homes that they were trying to get into. And so we fell so far down the list that they told us don't even worry about coming up anytime soon. And again, at this point in this juncture, we were paying rent on a space. Now, this rent is 2 times more than the rent that we pay on both of our properties put together. And so it was running through some funds. And so it was nobody but the grace of God that brought us out. We still didn't have to take out a loan. We still didn't have to borrow money from nobody. I was still able to cash my checks, my personal paychecks that I get from the business, and all of the above. And I just thank God that through it all, He showed us grace, and we had to use a lot of wisdom in making moves, but we were able to make strategic moves based on previous experiences. So if I had to give you any takeaway points from this podcast, it would be to evaluate, and then after you done evaluate a third time. Get with you a CPA, get with you a money man, get with you someone who knows numbers, so that you're able to realistically look at this stuff on paper and plan for the worst and hope for the best. Because when it's all said and done, it takes finances, real life finances, to finesse a center into opening and getting in a position to be ready to walk through when it happens. The last thing you want to do is to start a project, enrolling out of opening a business, to get halfway through with $80,000 invested into this dream, to have to close because you have no more money, or you're not able to get a line of credit to push forward. So please do your research. And after you do your research, take the opportunity to sit down with all your family members at the table and tell them what to expect, what you're going to face walking through, and how to deal with it that will be more beneficial to you guys as a family, because again, you know those members of your family. Do not expect to take the easy way out. I do understand that Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all these other social media sites make it look like it happens overnight. And for some, it might. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I can only give you my experience, which it takes work. It takes dedication, it takes money, it takes time, it takes a willingness, and it takes you being in position mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Because people that are close to you and people who barely know you are going to doubt your ability to make this thing happen. And when people that you surround yourself with start to second guess you, you start to second guess yourself. And it is not easy to do. It's not easy to find yourself in a position to where the same people who you expect to pick you up are now talking behind you about what they expect for you to do or expect you not to be able to do. And that's the quickest way to lose people that you love and you care about, is through them second guessing you and not having your best interests at heart, and finding a story in your failure instead of your success. I am fortunate enough to even have my family that is not my nuclear, which is my son, my daughter, and my husband, but is my now extended family, which is my cousins and my aunties and my uncles and my parents, who supported us. And when I say they supported us because anybody, if you know me, you know my Aunt Sharon. When I started in my home, my Aunt Sharon was my bus driver. Now, mind you, my Aunt Sharon was my bus driver when my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and she was the sole caregiver for my grandmother. And every time we did bus run, my grandmother had to ride around with my Aunt Sharon in a van, picking up kids to bring them back to my house for me to care for them when we first got started. And anybody know anything about anyone with Alzheimer's, that takes a mental toll on you, and that's a lot. And it was never one day that she did not show up to help me out. Not one day. That was my family coming through to help me when I needed it. My mom had hip surgery the week after my wedding, but building up to my wedding, we had to get contractors in there and get people in there helping us clean. My mom had bone on bone, and she would still come and sit at the center and help us clean and sweep and mop in pain and crying. That's family. You know, I had my stepdad, my mom's husband, who is a contractor and has his own contracting company, came. And when we ran out of funds to pay contractors outside of what we had budgeted for, He came in and did that work for free. For free. Because we had ran out of funds. We had contractors that came in, said they were going to do the job, ran off with money, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and was unavailable. So when I tell you that's what it takes, that's what it takes. It's people who ride and support you and that is able to be there for you even when it's not comfortable to be there. So just please understand that it takes a village to do a job. It takes a village to be there and support you and to support your dreams and your goals and your aspirations, and make sure you surround yourself with those people. And I just thank God for my family, my extended family, my nuclear family, because there was never a day when I felt down. We didn't get together and we didn't pray. We didn't chop each other down. They didn't second guess me. They picked me up and they kept pushing. Even like when I had my daycare in my home, I have a cousin who has a son, and she unenrolled her son from a different daycare to roll him over here, just as her way of saying I'm doing what my part, doing what I can do. And so it goes a long way. It most definitely do. So never take your nuclear for granted, and make sure that you include them in every opportunity that they have to be a part of your dreams and see the success. And make sure you communicate with them that they are appreciated. Now, at this time, that was all I wanted to share for my first podcast. And I just want to make sure that if you have any questions or any concerns for me, please post them on the Facebook link below, and I'll do my best to get around to answering them and making sure that I'm answering them with clarity and answering to the best of my ability. I appreciate you taking this time today to tune in to the show. I appreciate you making yourselves available just to hear out my side of the story on what to expect when expecting success. Again, I'm still on the journey to get to my destination, but the journey has been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So walk into this year, making your goals plain on paper, and enjoying the opportunity to make memories with your family. And for me, I am out. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon.